Ezra had restored the law. The covenant had been renewed. But when travelers from Judah arrived at the Persian palace, they brought news that struck like a blow to the heart. The walls of Jerusalem still lay in ruins. The gates had been burned with fire. The people who survived were in great trouble and disgrace. The man who heard this report was not a priest or a prophet. He was a cupbearer, a servant in the court of King Artaxerxes. His name was Nehemiah. When Nehemiah heard the news, he sat down and wept. For days he mourned and fasted and prayed. The fasting was not a ritual of self-denial, but a posture of intercession, a man standing in the gap for his people, pleading with everything he had. The city of his fathers, the place where his ancestors were buried, lay exposed and defenseless. 100 years after the first exiles returned, Jerusalem was still a wound in the earth. Nehemiah's prayer was a mix of confession and appeal. He acknowledged that Israel had sinned. He claimed the promises God had made to Moses. And he asked for one thing, that God would grant him favor in the eyes of the king. Months passed. Winter turned to spring. And still Nehemiah waited, carrying his burden in silence while he served wine to the most powerful man on earth. Then came the day. Nehemiah brought wine to the king as usual, but something was different. His face, normally composed and professional, betrayed his grief. Artaxerxes noticed. "Why does your face look so sad when you are not ill?" the king asked. "This can be nothing but sadness of heart." Fear shot through Nehemiah. To show sadness in the king's presence could be seen as disloyalty, even treason. But he had no choice. "May the king live forever," Nehemiah replied. "Why should my face not look sad when the city where my ancestors are buried lies in ruins and its gates have been destroyed by fire?" The king's response was not anger, but curiosity. "What is it you want?" Nehemiah prayed silently in that moment. Then he spoke. "If it pleases the king, and if your servant has found favor in his sight, let him send me to the city in Judah where my ancestors are buried so that I can rebuild it." The king asked how long he would be gone. The queen was sitting beside him. And then, remarkably, he granted the request. He gave Nehemiah letters of safe passage through the provinces. He gave him authority to obtain timber from the royal forest for the gates, the walls, and a residence for himself. He sent army officers and cavalry to escort him. The gracious hand of God was upon him. When Nehemiah arrived in the region, he delivered the king's letters to the governors. Word spread quickly. A Jewish official with royal authority had come to seek the welfare of the people of Israel. Not everyone was pleased. Sanballat the Horonite and Tobiah the Ammonite official heard the news and were greatly displeased. These were powerful men with their own interests in the region. A rebuilt Jerusalem threatened their influence. But Nehemiah said nothing. Not yet. For 3 days he rested in Jerusalem. Then in the middle of the night he rose. Taking only a few trusted men and his own mount, he went out to inspect the walls. The darkness covered his movements. He rode along the ruined perimeter, examining the broken stones and burned gates, the valley gate, the jackal well, the dung gate, the fountain gate, the king's pool. Some places were so choked with rubble that his mount could not pass. He saw the full scope of the devastation. And he made his plan. The next morning, Nehemiah gathered the priests, the nobles, the officials, and the common people. "You see the trouble we are in," he said. "Jerusalem lies in ruins, and its gates have been burned with fire. Come, let us rebuild the wall of Jerusalem, and we will no longer be in disgrace." Then he told them about the gracious hand of God upon him and about the king's words of support. The response was immediate and unified. "Let us start rebuilding." The work began. Nehemiah organized the people with remarkable efficiency. He divided the wall into sections and assigned each section to a specific family, guild, or group. The high priest Eliashib led the priests in rebuilding the sheep gate. The men of Jericho worked on the next section. Goldsmiths and perfume makers, people not known for construction, took their places on the wall. Some worked near their own homes. Others traveled from distant towns to contribute. The list of workers reads like a roll call of the entire community. Families from across Judah participated. Men and women worked side by side. Even the daughters of one official helped repair a section of the wall. But not everyone joined. The nobles of Tekoa refused to put their shoulders to the work. They would not serve their lords. Their absence was noted and recorded. And outside the walls, the enemies watched with growing fury. Sanballat was furious. He mocked the Jews before his associates and the army of Samaria. "What are those feeble Jews doing?" he sneered. "Will they restore their wall? Will they offer sacrifices? Will they finish in a day? Can they bring the stones back to life from those heaps of rubble, burned as they are?" Tobiah the Ammonite was with him. "What they are building," he said, "if even a fox climbed up on it, he would break down their wall of stones." The insults stung. But Nehemiah did not respond in kind. He prayed, "Hear us, our God, for we are despised. Turn their insults back on their own heads." And the work continued. The people worked with all their heart. Within weeks, the wall was rebuilt to half its height all the way around the city. The gaps were beginning to close. When Sanballat, Tobiah, and their allies heard this, they were furious. They plotted together to come and fight against Jerusalem and stir up trouble. Nehemiah's response was both spiritual and practical. The people prayed to God, and they posted a guard day and night to meet the threat. But the pressure was mounting. The workers grew exhausted. The rubble seemed endless. The threat of attack hung over every hour. Some of the people began to lose heart. "The strength of the laborers is giving out," they said. "There is so much rubble that we cannot rebuild the wall." Meanwhile, the enemies boasted that they would slip into the city unnoticed and kill the workers before they knew what was happening. Nehemiah adjusted his strategy. He stationed armed guards at the lowest points of the wall, in the exposed places. He grouped families together with swords, spears, and bows. And he rallied them with a reminder of what they were fighting for. "Do not be afraid of them," he said. "Remember the Lord, who is great and awesome, and fight for your families, your sons and your daughters, your wives and your homes." From that day on, half of Nehemiah's men worked on construction, while the other half stood guard with spears, shields, bows, and armor. Those who carried materials did their work with one hand and held a weapon in the other. Each builder wore a sword at his side as he worked. A trumpeter stood beside Nehemiah at all times. If the alarm sounded anywhere along the wall, the people were to rally to that point. Nehemiah nor his men removed their clothes. They slept in them. They kept their weapons even going for water. The wall rose stone by stone, defended by exhausted, determined hands. It was not just external enemies that threatened the work. Internal tensions also erupted. Some of the people cried out against their fellow Jews. In order to buy grain during the famine, they had mortgaged their fields, their vineyards, their homes. Others had borrowed money to pay the king's tax. Some had even sold their children into slavery to pay their debts. "We are powerless," they said, "because our fields and our vineyards belong to others." Nehemiah was furious when he heard this. He called a public assembly and confronted the nobles and officials. "What you are doing is not right," he said. "You are extracting usury from your own people. We have done our best to buy back our fellow Jews who were sold to the nations. Now you are selling your own people only for them to be sold back to us." The accusers had no answer. "Give back their fields and vineyards," Nehemiah demanded. "Give back their olive groves and houses. Give back the interest you have charged." The leaders agreed. They took an oath before the priests, and Nehemiah shook out the folds of his robe as a symbolic warning. So may God shake out every man who does not keep this promise. The people said, "Amen," and they did as they had promised. The wall was nearly complete. The gaps were almost closed. Only the gates remained to be set in place. But the enemies had not given up. Thank you for listening to this episode of Exile and Return. If this story of Nehemiah's courage, night inspections, and building under threat moved you, please subscribe, like, and share this video. In the next episode, the enemies of Jerusalem launch their most dangerous attacks yet. Nehemiah must navigate assassination plots, false prophets, and political schemes to finish the wall.